All right, guys. Just writing to you in Discord that I restarted the stream just quickly because it looked like I was back, but it wasn't actually back because I checked on my YouTube. Please don't be that night. Let's hope it's not. Oy. Hello. All right, back. Everyone's back. Cool. Okay. Cool. All right. So really, what's up, Aaron? In the chat. Okay. So the first thing that I did is I downloaded the file. I downloaded the template. I unzipped it. Make sure that you're unzipping it. And then I put it into my project folder, which I made, new project folder in my 3D one, Cinema 4D files. And then I actually duplicated the template here and paste it here and put my last name and then which scene I was actually working in. What's up, Jose? Angels back in the chat too. Thanks, guys, for being patient. Hopefully that is the rest of the night. I've got a strong signal right now, so fingers crossed. Anyways, so I've made a project scene that is just specifically for my Surreal one, and when you guys open that up, what you are going to see, it will actually look like this right here. And obviously in here right now is we have some lights. We have a little bit of a scene set up for you guys, right? And we're going to work a little bit around this, especially right now with the Surreal scene. I think this will be a great start for us because we can work with a backdrop, whereas the reels, when you do the realistic scene, you kind of have to build like more of the environment around. We might get to that one today, we might not, depends on how far I go with the surrealistic scene, but this is what it's going to be like when you open it up. And we are not actually looking through the camera at this moment, so you have the opportunity to move your viewport camera around, right? Because we have a camera set up here. There's no animation happening to it, but it does I made it so that when you open up the file, you're not looking directly in the camera view. If you want to go into the camera view, again, you guys just have to click this little button, the little bracket right there, and it'll bring you right into that, in and out of that camera view for you. So let's kind of start, let's like hide our camera, right? We've got a protection tag on this camera, so we can't really move it right now. Let's just kind of hide it from our view so we're not seeing all the lines. Let's hide the studio backdrop is fine right there. In fact, let's just hide the lights right now. We'll work with the lighting towards the end, right? We have a target for one of the lights because we have a target light here. Okay, let's shut that off. So we've just, if you come up here in these little dots, right? If you just click these top ones until it turns red, it will just hide it from your view right here. You want to make sure you turn them back on before you go to render. But it's just a good way to kind of solo your view so you're working in just kind of like a generalized area. And then what I like to do is like to get everything set up. Then I like to add the lights in or move the lights around because then I set, really using lights. We're kind of telling a story with lighting and selling the mood, right? So that is an important part of the scene, but I think it comes later after we've really bulked everything out. And so we're going to work on just kind of filling this scene up with some things and moving from there. So at the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and furl this little studio folder up, and we're going to start putting things in here. Now, when it comes to surrealism, right, we talked about that for a brief second when we were in class on Tuesday. And surrealism is essentially like having bizarre qualities, right? We talked about Salvador Dali and how he used to take it looked like a mad dream world or like a nightmare world where everything was kind of elongated and skewed and melting together and kind of forming other objects, right? And we're not going to get that extensive, like it's not obviously not, we're not going to be like merging things together in that sense. But we're going to work with a predetermined asset browser, right? Because normally you would think, oh great, I'm going to have to model a bunch of stuff. We're not going to get into the bulk of modeling right now. I might show you guys how to manipulate like hard surface object things. But mainly we're going to utilize what is the asset browser inside of Cinema 4D, which we've talked about and looked at when grabbing materials. Hold on, let me bring this up real quick so we can maybe look at that in a second, pick some things out. But if you look up in this upper left corner, you have the asset browser. We're going to just open that up to expand it here. And you get the search menu, right? Now, when you search something, for instance, I'll type in, let me type in something easy that you guys will find, like chair. Okay. All of a sudden you see a ton of chairs show up here. But not all of the chairs are meant for our disposal, right? So when you're looking at these, it's important to start to look at where your category is. So these specific areas right here. And noting like, okay, where I can grab things from categories. And then if there's any icons in the upper left or bottom right corner of the object here. So all of a sudden I zoomed out, right? And you see all these little icons that are on our asset browser over here. And what these tell us is they tell us like whether we can use these or not. Now, the one with the red, like it's technically like a cube, but it just looks like not an octagon, but whatever they're called. It's for redshift. It's like a redshift object, right? There's redshift materials, redshift objects, because Redshift works with Maxon. It's like a sister company with Maxon, and they work together and to make things for Cinema 4D. And they've extended us this library, but unfortunately, right now, not all of you have the computing power to render out animated scenes using these objects or with redshift materials, even though they look very like they're highly realistic, and the redshift renderer uses your GPU to get like a majority of its power. But because of that issue and because of the way the lights work, and how they reflect and refract and bounce off objects and things like that, it's a little too heavy right now for the time frame that we have. And so we're going to really want to stick to objects that don't necessarily have this little thing in the corner. We might try it. Let's see, maybe if we can throw one in there, if it'll work with like the standard lighting. But we're going to be using standard lights, standard camera, standard materials that work with like the base model of Cinema 4D and not the Redshift version of it. Yeah, like it looks like a hexagon. Yeah. And then you zoom in when you can see it, it's the actual cube for Maxon's logo. It's this little cube right there. If I can zoom in on it. Like that one. This one right here. That logo. But it's like filled in and stuff. I don't know. I think it's that one. Or it's Redshift logo. Looks very similar. There's transparencies to it. Whatever. Anyways, so yeah. When you guys go to open this asset browser and you go looking at things and you're like, oh, I want to use that. And you go to drag it into your scene. It might show up black. First of all, let me see. Let's see where it is. Yeah. Right away, if we zoom in to that object, let's just kind of go like this. You see that all of a sudden the materials are different. Things don't look appropriate. And that is because it is a redshift object, and you have to have those. Maybe it will. Let's see here. Let's hit Control R to see if, nope. Yeah, you have to have special lighting and stuff for these. So thought it would for a second. Guess I was wrong. So if you go to render them out, And it looks really dark. No matter how many lights you have in there, you might have an issue. Okay. I'm just going to delete this here. I'm going to delete all these materials except for the studio backdrop one. There we go. Just have a basic object in here. Speaking of your material manager, right? Like it manages all your materials that you use in the scene is right over here. If you click this button that's right next to your render settings, you'll be able to access that, so you can open and close that as you would like to. And then when paying attention to these different categories, right? There's models, there are images, there are materials, media, there's all sorts of different things. So let's say you were wanting to drag an image into a picture frame. You want to make sure that you're working under images and not under models or scenes or anything like that. Because if you drag that in, it can just be a whole other issue and it's not going to work as like an image, right? So just being wary of the categories, the objects that you're grabbing when you look at this. And then, so with our surreal scene, the biggest thing to think about, like if I pull these, let me close this out of the way. Let me do this. Where's this one? Right here. We're going to start looking for some objects that we can find in there. And, you know, because we're limited on like what we can do with those objects, we have to think in terms of like, how can we make them surrealistic? So the biggest example from in the past is like if you grab, if you have like a human, let's see, that's a scene. We want to look at the models here. If I were to grab this old man and put him in my scene, he's a big man. Some of these might have animations to them, so who knows? Let's see. He might be back here. Yeah. Our man is over here, right? Put this man right here. And then I put an apple in my scene. And when I drag the apple in, it's going to originate it right up here. But then I increase the scale of this apple like a massive amount, right? This is not realistic. This is a very surrealistic type of scene. Like this is just kind of giving you the idea, right? Or maybe we put the man in the apple and now it's an apple man. That's not a real thing. It's surrealistic, right? So like thinking in terms of that when you're going to use the asset browser over here. So let's, with that in mind, let's kind of reset things right here. Let's get our view. I actually kind of might want to work in a very similar view as my camera was so that I can get an idea of what it's going to look like in the end shot. And I'm going to close this out of the way. I'm actually going to delete the apple and the big man. The big man, you're gone. I'm probably going to delete the cube. People call him Big Apple. Do you guys have like joke books sitting by your desk? No, you guys are witty and I dig it. So first thing we want to do is check our project settings, right? So Control D over here. And I'm going to hide my camera so that you guys can see the entire thing. And we want to obviously update over here our frame rate. We're going to turn it to 5 seconds. Right now it's I think 3 seconds. So we want to turn it to 120 frames, right? We can do the math in there. And then we're actually going to go into our animation tab right over here. And we're going to update something that allows us to get linear keyframes by default, at least on this program, because a big part of the animation when it comes to these scenes is that cinematic look comes from just a linear camera movements, kind of linear motion on all of the objects, because we want to sell that it's like constantly in motion, right? And when you get that linear camera movement, what it looks like is it looks like like if someone were to shoot something with their camera and you start recording and then you start moving and then you stop moving and then you stop recording and you bring that video into something and you go to edit it and you're going to cut out the first part of that video where you're like starting the video up until you get the motion going, and then that consistent motion you're going to cut the end of the video to get to cut out the part where you're like stopping the recording, right? And so you get this smooth, fluid, same speed motion that either pans from left to right or right to left, or you dolly in or zoom in, right? So that's the what I mean when I say that cinematic look, and we're gonna emulate that today with the camera movement and stuff and the animation. So let me go ahead here, and under the time max I'm gonna put 24 frames times 5 to get 120 frames. And then under the animation tab, by default you get the spline option, right? So that's the where it eases it naturally. For this project right here, I'm just going to click linear. You don't want to do it for every project, but for this one's perfect. And that way it'll default all your keyframes to linear movements. And it just depends on the situation. If you're doing something that starts animating while it's on screen, like it doesn't start animating until like 1 second or 2 seconds in, then you're going to want to ease those keyframes, right? But if it's moving constantly from the beginning to the end, then you want those linear keyframes to happen. So I'm just going to update that right there and go to project, and looks like we're all good. Let's go ahead and throw some stuff in the scene then. When I was looking at the surrealistic scenes, like the surrealism scenes earlier, where was that one I saw it? This one right here. This one looks pretty neat to me. The light's coming from, actually, the light's coming from like a source over here, and it's pointing this way, because you get these really weird long looking shadows from these butterflies, and the butterfly tails are extended, almost look like feet. In fact, the body is extended on this one. And then obviously this is surrealistic, right? The clock and the eye, and there's people here. There's like another light source that's coming from this side right here and pointing this way, because you get shadows off of the guys this way. So it's almost like there's like separate light sources coming. That looks pretty cool. When you start breaking apart imagery like this, like that's what you should be looking at as far as like some kind of reference, right, to what we can do. So let's see if there's like something like some kind of butterfly or something in our scene that we can find. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's go back here. Let's go to our asset browser, and we'll get lucky if we type this in and get one. Cool. Okay, it's a model. Let's bring it in. It's not, obviously not that detailed. Let's see what's going on here. Does this have an animation? Okay, it sure does. So if I zoom in quite a bit, let's zoom, and we turn the camera. Am I still looking through my camera? I feel like I wasn't. No, I'm not. Okay. And then I play this animation, right? It actually has an animated butterfly right here, which is kind of cool, so we can use that. Actually, let's let's put these butterflies maybe around something if we can. Is this the only motion that the butterfly goes? Like if I drag him forward, backwards, can we rotate it? Neat. Okay. It's kind of cool. Let's lock the... I don't want to touch the studio backdrop here. Let's put a protection tag on this. So I am going to just hit Shift-C, type Shift-C, and then type protection tag, and we're going to drag it onto the studio backdrop, which it won't let you do it to a null or like a folder, so you have to go like this and possibly add that protection tag that way. Will you put that on the base shape? No. Any of these? Okay, just try not to grab it. I know that's not the case. You know what's easier is just doing a studio backdrop like this too. I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to pause this animation. Let's zoom out here. Okay, that's the camera, right? So I'm going to close the butterfly. Let's hide the camera. Let's add that. There's an option for a, there we go, a studio backdrop that way, which is an actual primitive. And so I'll bring that into the, I'll bring that right into here. I'm going to increase the width, obviously, quite a bit. Height, quite a bit. Extension. Let's bring the depth back a little bit more. So we get a little bit of depth that way. And then let's round that sucker off. Let's continue to send it back a little bit more there as well. All right, you know, we'll be zoomed in quite a bit. That looks decent enough. And then I will add my, it'll be just easier adding the protection tag to this because it's not super nested, which should be fine. Really, dude? Why is it not working? Tags. Protection. There we go. For some reason, it wasn't letting me grab it. If you right-click and you go to rigging tags and you can just click protection. You can also right-click and you can start to type there and it will show you where it is as well. So if you right-click and then you just start typing something, it'll kind of navigate for you. The searching options inside of Cinema 4D is fantastic. But let's go ahead. And so we've got this butterfly happening here. We kind of want to, I'm going to want to try, let's see if we can try cloning it around an object. So I've got the sphere here. And cloning the butterfly could be a process where we would do something like adding a cloner. Maybe we have two different butterflies, right? So we'll make another one here in a second. Let me see, where are you at? It's not under this one, it's right here. You select this cloner, it looks like, you know, like a square with a bunch of circles around it. Drag this down here. And I stick this butterfly into the cloner, and it's going to clone that butterfly multiple times. And you can change, if you go into the object here, if you click on the cloner, you can change the way it is done. Like you can stick it to an object. And that object would be the, let's see, where's that? You drag the sphere into here and it would clone it around the objects, but we have a little less variety. Let's go into that cloner. Let's see here if we can make this work. First of all, let's drop the count down to like 5 for now, or let's do 10 so we can kind of see them. If we play this, they're all going to be chaotic. They're all just standing in one spot, right? Distribution on the surface is what we want. If it distributes them on the vertex, you get like all these chaotic looking like lines that are verging together, and that's a big way on how this works. So this can get kind of crazy, and so just kind of experimenting with some of these things is smart. But these butterflies have this weird, let's see if we can take that off of that butterfly object, this helix. What does this helix do? Is it necessary? I do not think so. Let's delete the helix. Cool. That gets that out of the way for us. If we still play this, do we still have the animation? We do. Cool. So if I select this cloner, we're going to close this out. And first of all, let's try and scale this butterfly down. Scale them down so they're a little smaller. So I just hit T there and I clicked off, and then I just am scaling it down, right? And go back into this cloner here and clones. We could do random. iterations of each one. Each one is an instance, right? So it's not an actual object. So the problem with that being in the cloner, right, is I don't have the ability to come in here and grab individual objects and manipulate those objects individually, right? So I can't just grab one of these butterflies randomly and do that. You unfortunately have to have these each their own separate objects in order to do so. And you could tell that, you know, there's rendered instances, but they're all what's happening within the cloner object is it's just creating a bunch of instances of this object itself. So as long as there's not a bunch of stuff that you want to do with these individually, then this cloner method should work for you guys. Let's see the effectors. Actually, we might be able to do something else here. Let's grab these butterflies and rotate them. So maybe they are... Can I rotate these butterflies? Let's see, go back. Do I have to rotate? Might work different because of the symmetry. Okay, that's their wings, their selves. So let's see if I can select the hypernerbs and there we go. Sometimes you just have to go within these little folders and just kind of select each one and start moving around to see where you're getting that change at, you know. And so we're gonna do this here. That doesn't look bad. And then if I grab this and start rotating this doesn't do anything. If I grab the null here, what does this do? This rotates them all separately as well. The hypernerbs folder is going to also do that. Separate them as well. So let's do that. Let's go into the cloner again. Let's see. Fixed texture, object, sphere. Let's drop this down. You can drop the size of, you can actually adjust your object that the butterflies are around. So you can adjust the in my case, the sphere that I have. But I don't really want to do that too much because then the butterflies are all intersecting. And I don't want that. Let's see here. We can... If we disable the sphere, it disables the whole thing. So when you click these buttons, this shuts this off in the the viewport, but it doesn't shut it off in the render. So if I hit Control R to see what I can see on my actual screen here, it's going to still show that sphere even though it's not in my viewport. And so in order to shut it off in the actual render, you have to turn the little red tag underneath it off. And then I believe that it takes away that object itself. So it's not in the render, but we can use it here for the butterfly cloner that we have going on. So we can, and then it's still going to work just like the normal cloner. So even if I came down to the cloner and I went to the object and I wanted to make this bigger, it will still make this bigger and still allow me to have all of my butterflies around it. But then when I go to render this out, it won't be there, right? So this is kind of cool because then I can take this sphere and maybe we start to animate the rotation of the sphere, right? So not only will the butterflies be flapping their wings while they're in the air, but there also can be the actual object can be rotating at the same time. So Johnny Appleseed. That's funny. I just read that. And by the way, Evan, I see that you have your pizza and your salad. Good choice today. Let's mess around with some of these other ones. The enable scaling. Is this going to change the scale of each one of them? It does not. Let's shut that off. Surface distribution. This chooses where on the surface it's distributed, so you can select different areas if you want to see how you like the way it looks. You can also do, you know, a grid style too. So if you want them in a grid, you can place them in a grid. You can place them in like a honeycomb shape, radial, but I want it around my object, so I'm obviously going to select that. But I want you guys to see how you can actually like play around with this to get different effects, essentially. And I'm going to move this sphere over. Let's do this. Actually, and I saw an eyeball there. Let's actually center this. Turn my camera on so I can see the camera. Look through the camera. And let's bring this... Oh, I think I'm moving the camera. Make sure that I click off of the studio, right? I want to select the actual sphere itself and bring that up. And maybe scale everything down. So I'm going to hit T and just kind of scale that down. I'm going to grab the cloner and maybe we can, I don't know if we can scale the cloner down a little bit more. Let's change the seed. Ooh, I liked it before, right there. The seed's going to change just kind of how, let's see if I change the scaling. Oh yeah. So if you enable the scaling right here, what that's going to do is it's going to change the scaling of the butterflies randomly. And so we can decide how high we want that to go. So maybe I want it to only be able to scale up like 20% instead of 50%. And that way the objects aren't going to be all so like wide variety of sizes. Let me go back to that cloner there. And then let's just kind of hit that random seed again until we get something that we like. We could also duplicate this again. Ooh, that's kind of neat. And let's make sure we move this to our center area, because right now we're looking through the camera. I want to remind us of that. I need to remind myself of that, looking through the camera. I'm going to grab the sphere. I'm going to hit E, and then I'm going to just kind of center this in the middle of my shot. Right about there. I obviously need to take this backdrop and extend the height. Is that the backdrop? Let me go back out of here. Yeah, what is it? Does it only go to a certain height? I guess it does. Oh, I know why it's not working. We have the protection tag. Let's click on that. I want to leave it on there. I just want to expose the object. If I click that, then I should be able to go back onto here and then increase the height. There we go. Whoa, now that's crazy. Let's put these numbers in exact. 2000. Let me delete this tag off of here because it's not going to let me change it. Let's look through this so we know we're getting that. Cool. 2000 the height, not 200. Add the extra 0. And I think we should be good. Like if we zoom out here, if we're in the camera and I'm zooming out, I can't do that because it's also a protection tag. So we'll have to remove that when we're ready. Let's leave that here, but I think we'll be okay. We might have to adjust some things later, but I think we'll be okay there. Let me add that protection tag back to the backdrop here so that I can't touch it. And this seems to be okay as far as like the being centered. Let's scale that sphere actually a little bit bigger because I am going to see if there's an eye. Let's see if there's an eyeball, because they all use like eyeballs, right? Like this is a material. I don't think you can just throw that on there actually as a material. You don't actually need a model to do that, right? So we can show that sphere now. Or maybe we want to hide that sphere. Maybe we want to have different rotational properties of both spheres, right? So we want to have a different rotational property of the eye versus the butterflies around it. And so how I would get around doing that is I would come up here and I would create a null object. I'm going to bring that down here, and I'm going to rename this to, let's do sphere, or this is butterfly eye. Whatever. The naming convention doesn't have to be amazing, right? It just has to convey it to you. And I'm going to drop this sphere into that null. And in fact, I'm going to bring the cloner underneath it too, just so they're all in one single like folder here. So if I do that, I can just see everything that's in here. And I'm going to duplicate this sphere up here, and I'm going to just control copy paste, right? And I'm going to drag that back down in here, and I'm going to show this so we can actually see it. And this one I'm going to rename to eyeball, right? And so now if we take this whole butterfly eye and we move it, it moves the entire object and not just one thing and the other, right? And so you could animate that, but we're going to have separate control over both the eye and the sphere of the butterflies. So I'm going to hit T on here. I'm going to select my eyeball, and I'm just going to scale this down a little bit so they don't actually touch all of it. And then I'm going to come over here to my object type, and I'm going to change the type from standard. I want to see my lines on the sphere real quick. So I'm going to hit N, and then I want to hit B because I want to see the lines around it. And that's going to allow me to tell which type of geometry this is. And I'm just going to change that real quick. Let's just change that to the hexahedron because we'll just have a little bit more ability if we ever needed to. I just like to work with these ones and have the ability to make changes to the actual geometry itself if I want to. But I'm going to take this material, this brown eye, and I'm going to drag that onto the eyeball right here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is open my material manager. And it looks like there's two eyeballs connected. Let's roll around here. I don't see it. Just looks like one eyeball to me. And instead of rotating the actual sphere itself, I'm going to rotate the material. I'm going to hit NA because I don't need to see those lines anymore. And I'm not in my camera right now, so I'm going to just furl that up so I don't have to see it. And let's open this material. I'm going to double click on the material right here and open the material editor. And let's find out where that eyeball is at. Looks like it's right here. Possibly. If I double click this, it is, oh, this is how we can change the color. So if you want, let's say a blue eye, I can double click on this and then pick like a blue that I like. Something a little bit more aqua. Hit OK there. And then change this one. So this is essentially, it's just a gradient right here. So I'm going to double click that color on the gradient panel. And then I'm just going to drag this over so I can get whatever kind of colors I want, right? So this is kind of nice right there. I'm going to hit OK. So it's kind of a matching color palette. It looks, actually, you know what I do? I've changed the color here. I'm going to close out of that and rename this. Instead of brown eyes, let's label it blue. Best practices, right? To have these as clean as you can. Let's erase these things that we don't need, right? We don't need this. We just need these materials. I'm going to actually close the material editor, and up here you have different selections that you can grab, like different ways to select specific properties of an object, right? So here you can select on the vertices of an object. Here is an edge selector. Here is a polygon selector, or like a face of the object. Right now we're in object mode itself. So when we grab at the object, it's going to grab everything within that object on that object, including materials and stuff. And this gives us the opportunity to edit the materials in a specific way. So if I click on that, I should be able to just hit my rotate button and then rotate that material 90 degrees instead of actually rotating the eyeball itself. In fact, let me do this by holding shift and then clicking and clicking, dragging, and then grabbing, holding shift. So I get it at exactly 90. And then I'm just going to go back to my object selection there and hit E. And the biggest benefit of that is that my coordinates are still facing up in the correct orientation, right? They're not down or around or facing anywhere weird. They're facing in the appropriate direction that they need to, that they originally were facing when we created the object. And so I'm going to go ahead and, so I've got that in the center. Let's build out the rest of this. Let's grab this whole null and kind of bring it upwards. This whole object itself, bring it up. Let's look through our studio camera so we can kind of see where we're at. Maybe bring it down a little bit more into our scene. Maybe we want to scale the entire thing, right? So I'm going to grab the whole thing, hit T, and just bring this down a little bit so it's not so big because it takes up a lot of space right now. And maybe I want some other stuff behind it. All right. Let's do that. Let's jump out of our camera. And what do we see before on the other image, right? And you can do this, right? I can pick any image. It doesn't have to be the butterflies. It can be anything that I find in here. Let's pick, if I look back at that image, there's a tree line back here, which looks cool. Big eyeball, the tree line. This is a cool piece of art. Let's go down a bit further and look at some other stuff. A lot of eyeballs, like tons of eyeballs. Everyone likes eyeballs and surrealism. It's like a big theme in all of this stuff. Some like really weird looking stuff here. Let's find, let's see if we can just kind of customize something. Let's look up trees, right? Or some kind of, maybe instead of, ooh, can I grab this? So here's another thing. If you look over here, and you hover over, if you hover over any of the icons that are on these objects inside of the asset manager, it will say like what it requires, right? So this asset requires Cinema 4D subscription. Your student one, your license is a student one. For more information, you have to click. So if I try and click and drag this in here, it won't let me use it because it's like requires a higher subscription, which is really kind of crappy. But it is what it is. I can't change it, I guess. And a lot of these are Redshift ones. I wish, is there a filter option? Let me see. There is a filter. So, sort by, group by. Okay, I guess it doesn't. I have to do coding there. I don't know coding. Not a lot of it. So, let's just look over here. Models. Motion capture, templates, and presets, standard and physical. That's what I want. 2D elements. Okay, nope. Those are masks. Arts and crafts. Bathroom stuff, bedroom stuff, cogwheels, and objects. These are cool. These were used in that one example. So like some different things in that. Windows, electronics, eyewear, obviously. Coins everywhere. I really want plants. I want to keep like some kind of like theme if I can with this. European trees. Maybe we'll grab this. Garden and exotic plants. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can see all of them. Let's put some cool like bushing flowers on the ground. I think that would be cool. And we can do this using a scatter pen. And the scatter pen is pretty cool. It's pretty fun. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to drag it onto the scene. Let's see about how big it is. Perfect. It's not that big. And maybe I want these yellow roses as well. So 2 different kinds. And I am going to close my asset browser right now and move them kind of close to each other, but not exactly on top of each other. And if I zoom into them, we can see, I'll just kind of go like this. I'm not in my camera. Nope. Okay. There we go. All right. We're in world mode right here. If I grab this and put it in object mode, it rotates a little bit differently. But I'm going to put it back into world mode right there. So then the rotation happens a little bit different. It rotates around the entire center of the world and not around the object. So that's what this little button up here means. But let's go ahead and we're going to grab both of these roses. We're going to select the one up here in the object panel. I'm going to hold shift and grab the other one. And then I'm going to grab this over here on the left side. There's this scatter pen, and I'm going to grab that scatter pen. And if I look over here, all of a sudden I get this in this attributes panel, some like options here, right? So right now the pen is sent to an add mode, which means I'm going to draw things on the surface. I believe shift allows you to stay in that add mode. And if you want to erase, you hit control or command on a Mac in order to remove whatever you lay down, right? So if you want, like if I take this and I start drawing things and I'm adding them on, but then I want to remove them, if I hold down, not Alt, but Control, I think Control, Shift, nope, Shift draws. You have to make sure that you're selected on the objects, right? So I have to hit, in order to do that, I'm going to have to hit select these rose bushes, make sure I'm in the scatter pen, and then if I draw on here, or if I want to, I guess this only, we'll select that once. We'll go back to the basics here. Yeah, it's not drawing. Let's just hit back real quick. All right. So I've got these selected. I'm going to grab the scatter pen. It's going to give me the objects here. The source is whatever I'm selecting right now. So the object palette, if you put this here, you can actually drop these objects into the palette here, and then you can draw based on that. And I don't believe you have to select them every time to draw. You can just click and draw like this, right? And so you get this random scattering of the objects here. And if I want to remove from that, I'll just select this remove option, and then I can click and kind of drag over certain objects here, and then remove them. Sometimes you have to click multiple times, but if I just click, come on. You have to get like the origin point of them. So like the base part right there. So you can get like a lot of control over this and where you kind of want these objects. The other thing you can do is you can decide how far or how close together you want them, right? So if I'm grabbing my pen here, let's grab the scatter pen again. And I want to go into add mode, right? Because I was in remove. And I want to draw these. But I want to change how the radius of them. I can update the radius. I can go here and I can update the, let me go back. I think this was at like 5 or something. Maybe it wasn't at that. Back. 41. It was higher than that. Maybe 50, I think it was. If I change the spacing, it will obviously change the density of how those objects are close together. The splat spacing will determine how like random they are and how far apart they are. So if I zoom out of my scene right here, and I start moving up there and I start changing the splat spacing, it will change that. It'll change how many you can put on there. So if I want more, right, I'm going to drop my radius, increase the radius. Drop that spacing. Let's put it at 0, actually. Let's bring this down to 75. And you can change the seed that it's in, right? So if you want a random seed there, let's go down a little further. Here, you can change so you can transform the actual objects themselves. So you can change the scale here, like you would do in the cloner object. This is a little bit different, right? So you can have a little bit more control over individual objects here. Like if I drop the scale min to max, like if I want them only 25 to maybe 50%, I can do that here. And when I draw now, they'll be much smaller. So I can really densely pack an area here if I want to with objects. And if I think that is really, like, you can update the positioning of them if you want them to be in different positions, and X and Y position it gives you the option to do. So let me go back here to 0. Rotation range, so you can rotate these objects if you want to. If you have objects that look that are really interesting looking and in 3 dimensions, like all 3 coordinates, you could do that rotation here. But because these are obviously meant to be on the ground, I'm just going to keep that Y rotation as 0 and just maybe mess around a little bit more with the X rotation. Let's do 180 there, and it just changes the way they're all rotated together. And then if I want to, let's see, under display, pen itself, I think there is a way that you can actually grab objects in here. I think you have to select which one is it? It's not the brush selection. Let's go. We don't want to doodle paint. This one is the pen tool, polygon pen. We don't need that one. This one right here, the place tool. I'm like, where is it? So if I grab the place tool and grab, I think you just have to drop this scatter object down. Is it this one? If I double click on it, there is a place. If I take my reference object, I can grab it and I can rotate it or change things if I want to. Like right now I'm moving the buds off of the actual roses itself, so I don't necessarily want to do that, right? Let's see, because these are affected by the splatter or the scatter brush. How is it? You select the scatter object up there, and yeah, I think you just grab these and you can move them themselves. I don't know if you can only grab the originals though. I'll have to look that up. 1 second, guys. Let me look it up. The placement tool is pretty cool too. We'll use that real quick. The scatter pen makes it easy to scatter a single object or selection of objects onto the surface and simply dragging them within view. Yes, I know that. I already know that. Yeah, I would just then, maybe there's not, maybe you do have to turn this into something else. You select the scatter one and then you just click on these. I think you just click on the objects. And then you can grab them if you have your placement tool, move them around. Scatter, grab the orange roses, move them. There we go. We can update them. Let's kind of maybe keep them, I guess, on the ground. Let's see what's through a camera, right? Because if we can get them on the wall, that'd be cool. It's wanting to, right now, when you grab the place tool, what the place tool wants to do is it wants to essentially like attach things to other things, right? So when I grab the place tool, it's kind of doing some chaotic stuff right now. Zoom out of this. Let's see what I did here. And if I grab this, it's going to want to connect it to other objects. So for instance, if I have a cube and I just grab the regular move tool and I move this over here and I try and grab the scatter one and I grab this pen select here and I grab these objects and I try and put them, it's going to try and snap it to the edge of an object. So that's kind of what's happening here when you grab this placement tool, is it's going to snap things to surfaces, right? And then you have, so you can just grab the object directly and move it around like this. And then with these objects, especially when you have the asset browser, like if I just look up a vase, right? The vase is the standard what everyone uses to show this example. And I drag this in here and I zoom into that vase. Let's go ahead and do that right here. And you see that there's these, like, there's this purple, like, options around the actual object itself. And so if you grab the object, you can move it. It's got this little bounding box when you click and grab onto it that shows the base of the object, which is that little circle. And then just kind of the bounding boxes around it, because the object has like these invisible boundaries, which it uses to essentially determine where it is connecting with another object or intersecting with another object. And if I grab this one right here, this like half circle, and I click and I drag it, it gives me the option to rotate my object, and then I can also scale my object with this. And so the placement tool here is really great when you guys are going to go to create your realistic scene, right? Because a realism scene is fairly easy. It's just recreating like your office or some kind of room in your house. And so using the objects that are inside of here and just rotating them as needed to be, or scaling them if you need to, is very beneficial. Now, let's say that I wanted to take, let's do something else. I'm going to show you the other tool here too, because we're probably going to be on this realistic scene for a while. So, or the surrealism one. So let's just see what we can do. I'm going to grab just a general coffee mug here. Maybe this one, just like a tea mug. Bring that in. Let's grab some pens. If we can, grab a pen. Okay, there's a pen here. We'll throw that there. We'll grab this pen. We'll grab a pencil. Let's grab this red pencil right here. We'll grab this regular pen too. Drag that in. All right. And then let me close this out of here and we'll zoom into that area. And so I've got this cup with these pens. Let's say that I was trying to create this scene like on the top of my desk, right? Let's say I have a cup with pens on my desk, and you could grab these and you can try and rotate them and move them around and stuff like that. But there's an easier way to do it, and that is using the dynamic placement tool. We'll see if it works here. And so I'm going to move, clicking off, grabbing this one separate. Oh, look, it took the cap off of that pen. Let's grab the entire pen itself. Sometimes you got to grab them from up in your object manager right here. But I'm actually going to select all of these pencils. And I'm going to grab this dynamic selection tool right over here, which is this tool right below the regular placement tool. So this is dynamic like placement tool, right? And I'm going to click these objects, and what it does is it gives them like this dynamic feeling, right? When I'm obviously clicking and dragging and moving these around. First of all, this part fell off of, let me just delete that. It came off of one of the pens, right? We won't worry about it, but, ooh, what is that? Yeah, let's delete that too. Oh, it looks like I got rid of one of the pens. Whatever. Let's move this one. You have to grab all of them. And I click on this. Oh, come on. Are you going to work for me today? This might not be the easiest one for everyone to use. It depends on how your computer works with it. Let me select all of these. Let's click this. See what it does. Click on these objects. It's creating like a box. You see this little orange box that's created around it. Shift clicking on this one. Shift clicking on this one. Shift click on this. I'm going to hit E. Never mind. Oops. Over here, this is wrong. Hold on one second, you guys. Let me pull up. I had notes about this specific tool because I don't use it very often. But let's do this again. Delete these. I'll use not an oil tank, but like just a cylinder. Let's use a cylinder for this. Move it back here. Move it over here. Obviously, we want this much smaller. Not 0%, but small. We want you small. But tall. Skinny. Skinny and tall. All right, actually, I think it's taller than it looks because if I move it up this way, there we go. Let's make it a little bit thinner. And we'll use this, right? Okay. One object at a time might be easier right now. Okay. So I've got like my pen here. I'm going to select the cylinder and select my dynamic pen tool. And when you look over here, it gives you different options as far as like what the scale of the object is. That's beneficial when you have multiple objects next to each other. So if I copy and paste this, and then I move this one away from each other and I select both of them, and with the clicking on the dynamic selection tool, and I click this and I drop this size down, what that'll allow them to do is when I move these around, it won't let them like intersect with each other and cut into each other. It essentially respects each other's bounding boxes, and so they'll bounce off of each other instead of actually touching each other. And so let's grab them and move them over here. Come on, you gonna work for me? This is just a pain. Grabbing all of them, grabbing this, grabbing these. Come on, okay. And if I hold, while having this over top of the actual cup, because the cup is going to have like a rigid body added to it, right? It's going to be, there's like dimensions added to this that make it hard. And so if I, with this dynamic selection tool selected, I'm going to click and just drag down here. In fact, if I hold up like this and I shift and drop, so let me do that again for you guys. If I hold down shift and I click and just kind of drag down like that, I'll do it in a second, it's going to drop these into the cup and they'll bounce off of each other, and it'll just give like a more natural looking landing to them, right? How they end up on the actual, in the cup itself. And so a really cool option to use when you guys are putting things together. Like this is really cool if you want to scatter bottles across a table or something like that. Throwing a table in there and throwing the bottles across of it, that works as well. But this dynamic placement tool might not work very well for everyone. So you have to just grab both of the objects. Come on, select it. I can just grab them both here. And if I were to move them up, right, they're gonna respect each other's bounding boxes. And then we're gonna just hit shift, click, and drag. And look, and all of a sudden it drops down into oblivion because there's no rigid body tag on the backdrop itself. If you wanted to do that, actually, that's kind of a cool idea, right? So let's think of this. Let's get rid of this teacup here. And let's zoom out of our scene a little bit here, kind of center ourselves a little bit more again. Zoom back in, move over. Let's delete these cylinders and maybe scatter some little cubes everywhere. So in order to do that though, you have to have actual multiple objects of it, right? So you can't just do, unfortunately, instances. It has to be actual objects. Let's hit E there. Let's move this over here. Let's say that I wanted like copy, paste. Let's have 6 of these cubes. And then we're going to grab them. Actually, let's just kind of move them around each other. Doesn't matter which order. I'm just going to click them and drag them, because I'm going to toss them. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. And I'm going to grab before I grab these and throw them against the floor or whatever, I am actually going to set a rigid body tag on the backdrop so that I can throw things on it and they won't just fall through the floor like you saw happen. It'll actually use the geometry of the floor as like an object. So I'm just going to right click on here and just type in rigid. It's usually under a bullet tag. And I'm going to select rigid body and throw that onto this object. Now that is perfectly fine. But the problem is now if I hit play, usually maybe it's not, maybe the default changed. Let me go to the beginning of the timeline, hit play here. Yeah, no. Usually you have to double check in the dynamics right here and just make sure that it doesn't fall. Like if you hit play and everything starts to fall, then that is because there is like gravity on the object, and so it's using the gravity of essentially the world around you inside of the world here to drop things down, and then it just falls into oblivion. So it looks like that's okay. Let's throw the rigid body tag on these cubes. Actually, I don't think I have to. Let's see if I have to. I'm going to grab this here with all of these selected. I'm going to pick them up and I'm going to just shift and kind of toss them at the wall here. Let's see what happened. Nothing. Click and throw them. Come on, throw them. Throw them. Click and throw in a different direction. Oh, they're falling. Click and throw them. Okay, so some of them have like collided on there, but not all of them. So let's do this. Let's move them back. And I am going to then add a rigid body to these as well. So I'm going to hit Shift C, type in rigid body tag, drag it to the objects. Drag it. It must not be, but you have to do it one at a time. I think I can just copy this. Copy. Click on the object here and hit paste. Nope, that doesn't work. Sometimes we learn new things. Remove from layer. Set as copy tag to children. Okay. Which we don't want to do. We'll just set it for each one. Right click, bullet tag, rigid body. Right click, bullet tag, rigid body. Probably should have done this when I created the first cube. Right click, bullet tag, rigid body. Okay, let's select this one. Dynamics are enabled. On. Okay. Let's shift click all of these. Now let's try and shift click down. Come on. Come on, buddy. You not working? Interesting. Let's try it one at a time. What is it that these have? Collision. Let's see. Let's disable the dynamics on this. Maybe that's a problem. So let's disable the dynamics. Well, you want the dynamics enabled, right? Because you want it to have a rigid body, but you don't want it to have weight. Or let's see if this will help. Changing these by turning them off. We'll make it so they don't fall to the ground. And that might be the okay, so they don't fall now. Let's go back to that studio backdrop. Let's delete that tag off of here. And if we play, does it... Okay, so the studio backdrop also falls. So we need to disable the dynamics on that one. And let's grab this cube and bring it up here. And then if we hit play... Nice, it doesn't fall. Okay. So maybe if I grab and throw it. I might have to look into this a little bit more for you guys to see how to do it with like these objects on a different, there might have to be enable off. Let's try that. Maybe we figured it out. Let's look at this in a different view. Maybe from this view. We're just experimenting today. So, there we go. Oh, I have to hold down shift the whole time. Come on. Let me look into this and how to get this to work with objects that are not in the asset browser. For the meantime, you'll be able to use the ones within the asset browser with the dynamic placement tool. So I don't think with collisions with the rest of the scene. Okay, I've done that. So collision is on this as well. Set collision. Yeah, it's on. Should work. Anyways, all right, let's just place these then. Sorry, guys. I thought we could do something more fun there. Let's just kind of make some pillars. This one's taller. Maybe it's rotated a little bit. Like maybe halfway in between. Maybe this one. Maybe these pillars could be made of glass or something too. Right? Let's bring that one over here. Hit E. Let's move it. Kind of. The movement of this a little bit is I'm being a little bit more free with like rotating and stuff, like grabbing out here and just like spinning. But normally what I would do is what's best practice is to grab each one of these axes within like the gizmo and turn them like that, right? Because right now I'm turning the actual backdrop, which I don't want to do. Let's add that tag again. Protection. Rigging. Protection tag so we don't touch it. But we could do this, I guess. We could just put we could turn the dynamics back on onto these cubes. So this one, I'll click on this tag right here, and then we will go back to dynamics, and we'll turn it back on. And because we have the rigid body on the actual backdrop, if I take this now, and I move it up, and I hit play, it will usually drop and hit the actual... Let's see, it moved it up here. It should hit this and just bounce off of it. Where in the space is this? Okay, now it's up there. Let's go back. Dynamics on. Let's turn that on. Now if I play it, no, this should work. There's something I am not properly, there's some kind of setting in here that I'm missing right now. I don't want it to fall, so I don't really want... If I play this, does it do it? Oh, I can shut the trigger on collision immediately. That's not what we want. Huh. Well, they collide against each other. Right? So this actual cube that went falling was colliding with the other cube, so that was working. We're in object mode. Restarted it. There we go. Huh. Maybe it's just the location of the object itself. Maybe if I bring it in a little bit more. Sometimes it's just like troubleshooting some issues. No, I'll figure that out later. In the meantime, we'll just like place things, right? So I'm gonna look through my camera. I'm gonna remove all these tags on here, holding control, and then I'll just delete them. Delete that. I'll figure out when it wasn't working. Let's look through here. Maybe we have these like weirdly placed. Different sizes. Just kind of grabbing things, moving them around. Let's go back out, or let's click this one, World View. There we go. Move this one down. Maybe we make this a little bit shorter, but thinner. And get out of our camera. And maybe we zoom around here, zoom into here. I think I'm going to move these guys onto the back of there, but first. If I want to be precise with things, I can go into my different views, right? So view. Where do I reset the frame? Frame default. And then I can just kind of zoom out of here, zoom back in. Maybe I want to put this, maybe this thing will have like some feet, right? So move this one here. Grab this cube. Right there. Move that one down as well. Maybe we'll go into a different view. We could do this view right here, the front view, and move it to the actual cube, the big cube. So the big cube is, which one are you? This one. This one's a big cube. Okay. Let's rename that big cube. Let's grab that one and maybe line it up right there. So it's got some feet. I don't know. Grab that one, plus the big cube, plus this cube. And maybe move them down a bit. Maybe this platform will like rise up or something. What time are we at? 7:30. We'll start animating it soon here. Okay. You know, this can get really bizarre, and I'm okay with that. Like, I have no idea. I had no direction of what I was going in today, and obviously you can tell that kind of. So, like, planning things out a little bit more might be helpful in this process, right? So you're not just kind of doing what I'm doing and just messing around for hours, because that can just be time. It's just so time-consuming that way. Let's go back this way and grab the place tool, actually, and then we're going to grab these. And we're going to move them up onto here and zoom in and maybe hide these two right here. But we're using them, right? So we don't want these to just fully disappear and be gone. We just want to hide them from our view at the bottom. And then let me go back up to the actual, oh shoot, if I do that, does it get rid of all of them? I guess it does. Guess you can't do this, you guys. Anyways, grab the place tool, grab these, the scatter brush, and let's just make them bigger. Quite a bit bigger. And let's move them. You know, they're not going to want to snap to this curve. That's a problem there. But if we look through the camera, we should see them kind of up top there. That's kind of neat. And then what we could do is essentially the same thing we did before, right? Is we could create, how would I want to do this? Create like another floating object and having it stick to it. So like creating another cube, bringing that up and making this big. So you can get a lot of mileage out of the same techniques, right? So I'm just going to scale this until it's about, I don't know, in camera view, so we can make this bigger. Essentially making like a wall, right? And then I'm going to bring this back here, right to about there. And then I'm going to grab all of my scatter brush with the placement tool, and I'm going to grab these guys, and then I'm going to just snap them to this. There we go. This works really well, much better. Let's rotate these. We'll move them a little bit, and then maybe you want to rotate them like that. Move them up a little bit more. There we go. And then let's go ahead and hide the box that we just made, which is this one. E. Okay. Let's put plant box. And then we'll hide this one from the render so that they're on there, but they're not getting cut off in that corner object right there, so they look like they're like actually on the wall, but they're not, right? And so let's add some animation to some of these things right now. Since we're like in our view, let's add some rotational properties to some of this stuff. Let me grab these, move them over just slightly, grab this one, move it up a little bit. And let's put some, we'll do the materials in a minute. For right now, I'm going to delete this one. Maybe delete this one. Duplicate this one. Control, drag. Put this one over here. Let's rotate it. Things are better in threes. Maybe it's like sitting in the sand, right? Control, get me one more. Let's make it a little bit smaller all around. Rotate it like it's resting on this one. Move it down. Like right there. I don't know. Got some interesting shadows happening there. Let's animate the eye first. So close the studio. We'll grab the butterfly eye. We're going to go here, and we are going to make sure that our playhead is over at the beginning of our timeline, We're going to click Dope Sheet View right here, and we are going to select the eyeball. Let's animate the rotation of eyeball first. We're going to keyframe the rotation properties, and then I'm just going to go pretty much to the end of my animation, which is 5 seconds long. Let's not do that. Let's do this. And zoom in here. Again, I'm just holding like 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2, and clicking and dragging along my timeline down here. And then I don't want a lot of like too much rotation. Maybe just a little bit of rotation in here, because the eye, I mean, like you could do a full rotation holding down shift, and then you have to remember to keyframe it, right? To keyframe that change. But I think it might move too fast. Let's play. No, it's not that bad. Let's go ahead and add a different rotation property onto this. Let's go all the way to back, or let's add, maybe we'll go to the end, right? Because we've got everything keyframed there. Let's maybe rotate a little bit up and over. No, that's not what I want to do. Oh. Maybe halfway. So maybe 180. Let's look what that looks like when I... Ooh, it's kind of crazy, right? The animation is... I think it's cooler if it lands on in the same spot. So let's go back to the eyeball. Let's maybe only make this a very small degree change. So like 15, let's do like 20 degrees. A 20-degree change, maybe even up. Negative, let's do, yeah, -5 degrees. -15, make it a little bit more. And then remember, you have to record it. And then we're gonna just kind of play this from the beginning. And it's slowly kind of rotating up and around. In fact, let's do this. So 120, half of 120 is 60. Let's bring that. Let's come back to the end. We'll change this 15 degree to 0, right? So it goes back to the original. Or we'll come here into the 60 degrees. Let's do -15 here. Keyframe that. Move forward. So what kind of happens here when we play this? It's just kind of going up. Let's have it do opposite here. So maybe here it goes 15 degrees the opposite direction. We're going to go back to the beginning again, play this. Okay, I'm gonna probably move this over to 48, bring this over to 72, grab these and drag this over here. In fact, I know what I want to do. Let's delete these ones and go to the end of the timeline and click on the eye again, and we're gonna do a 360 rotation here. Then this is going to stay at 0. So when I go to the beginning, this should be at 0. Okay. So then I'm going to go 40 frames in, and that's when I'm going to type in, let's see here. Let's do that. +15. Go over here to the 40, -15. Let's keyframe that. All right, kind of neat. Like, but then it's looping, right? So the end keyframes are exactly the same. So I could even make this a little bit more dramatic. So let's do -30, enter, keyframe it, and then let's do this one +30. Oop, click on the eyeball. 30, enter, keyframe it. And now when we play it, yeah, nice. Kind of just goes around and then it changes direction right there in the back, but you don't see it because the eyeball's turning. And then if I stop this now and we want to add in the rotation property of the butterfly, right? The cloner. So we're going to grab the sphere that's attached to that cloner. I'm going to save this. And then we're going to start rotating the sphere object as well. So let's go ahead and keyframe all the rotation properties here of the sphere. The sphere, but I meant to say sphere. And then let's rotate this. If I put 1 degree, 360. Actually, let's do 90, 90, 90. I'm not sure if I like the way it lands like that, but we'll see. So when I'm playing this, these guys are also rotating. There has to be, maybe I move this right here halfway, and I'm going to grab the sphere and I'm going to grab these keyframes. I'm going to move them in, and then maybe I want to copy these keyframes at the end here because, oops, what did I do? Z, Z, Z. Okay. I just want to grab these ones. There we go. And then move them in. What I did is I accidentally grabbed the ones at the beginning too. I didn't want to do that. But I'm going to grab the sphere and grab these ones and then control drag to the end. Right, so now we have a full rotation of that, but I'm actually going to change this to 180. I think that will be, or we could even go to 275, 180, oops, 180, 180, 180. So technically I might not even need these ones in here if I'm not changing direction. Yeah, I can just delete this one in a second. Delete. All right, that's cool. And let's see if I can find a way to update these cloners so that these little, okay, because it's rotating. Here's the access point, right? Like our anchor point of the object. So it's going to rotate around this. So if I want to change that, I can do so by, let's see here. If you come up here, remember how I was telling you guys about these different ways to grab objects? Well, if you select this and enable the access, you have the opportunity to grab this and then move this up to wherever you want it to be, right? So I'm going to use my quadrants here so it's centered already. But I just want to make sure that it's kind of centered in the middle of the eyeball about here, right? Because you got to think centered in the middle of all of the butterflies really is what I'm looking at. And then also here. So I have it fully centered up in the front view as well. Perfect. It looks pretty good. And then whenever you move that anchor point though, you want to make sure that you click off of that, right? Because if you don't, then you're still grabbing on the anchor point. And if you go to move your object, it's just going to move your anchor point, not the actual object itself. So you want to make sure that you click off of that and it's not selected, right? And then I'm going to click back onto the cloner. And now if I rotate these, they rotate that way, they rotate this way, they rotate that way. So maybe we can add like a counter rotation to the rotation that we have going on here. So Let's put that at 0. And we have this kind of rotation happening. Let's see if we do kind of opposite than that. So I'm going to do that, keyframe them, move forward, and do like a negative value. So maybe negative 45. Negative 45. Oh, not 45. Negative 45. Negative 45. Keyframe all of these guys. And let's see kind of what we have here. Neat. So they're kind of all going around here, flying around. These are all linear keyframes too, you guys. So because remember how we changed that in the beginning? The way you can tell is right here. Obviously it's selected on linear, but then if you also go into your graph editor here and you look and you select all of these and you hit H on your keyboard, they should all be straight lines, right? Even if there's a little bit of a like jump in some of them, they should, like this right there, it should still be straight in between each object's movement, right? So you're gonna want actually linear keyframes for this. Let's go to maybe these things start floating, right? So the cubes, this one, and no, let's do the big cube. Let's move the plant box to the scatter, or not a child of the scatter, but just maybe it goes right above it. And actually, let me take all these, select the plant box, select these. Let's put them in a null object. Shift click and drag and let it drop into there. What you'll see is that the little arrow, if the arrow is pointing down, oh, not that, didn't work like that. So when I go to grab something inside of my object file and I drag it down this way, if the arrow is pointing to the left of your screen, that means it's going to drop it in between the items. But if I go here and it's hovering over the item and it's a down arrow, that means it's going to make it a child of that arrow or that object, right? So we don't want that. We want it to just be its own object, not connected to anything else. I'm just going to rename this plants and plantas. Let me select the cubes now. So maybe the big cube. It's going to start here. I'm going to keyframe just the Y position, right? Or actually the X position. No, the Y. Perfect. It's correct. The gizmo is, there we go. If I turn it into my world view, the gizmo's up correctly. So I keyframed that, and then I'm going to drag this to the end here, and maybe this moves up a little bit. So starts to hover, right? And I want it to, this motion, because this is going to happen, because the big cube's movement is starting at the beginning from a stop position and then hovering up, I'm actually going to ease these keyframes a little bit. So I'm going to go into my F-curve mode, and I'm just going to select that big cube, and then I'm just going to come over here and select the spline tool there, and it's going to give us a little bit of easing. And then I'm just going to grab this one at the top and just kind of drag it. Oh, let's do this real quick. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's hit H on here so we can see. And if I hold down Shift and I drag here, Control to lock, right? So if I just start moving it like this, they're locked together. If I hold down Shift, it allows me to break that. And then if I hold down Control, it's going to lock that, right? So Shift, and I want to just make sure I don't go past this, right? I don't want it to go down first and overshoot. I just want it to be like a subtle, kind of subtle easing there. So I'm going to play this now. It's going to start off slow, and it's going to slowly rise up. I'm actually going to do this a little bit more. Bring this in a little bit. Very subtle easing on that one. Cool. And I'm actually going to apply the same things to the other ones as well. So the other ones, let's go ahead and select this cube here. We're going to hit E on the keyboard. And then we are going to also cube to, I'm going to relabel this one to floor cube 1, floor pillar 1. This cube is a foot cube, so I'm going to table foot. The naming convention's not necessarily table foot 2 the best, but it's quick right now. I'm going to drag this down here. Underneath the we want to put it under the big cube right there. The floor pillar 1, the floor pillar 2, and floor pillar 3. Okay. 2, floor pillar 3. All right, there we go. And then what you were seeing before is when I grabbed, up here in the top, when I unselected this, you're going to see the little gizmo on the actual object here. It's going to change and it's going to be kind of rotated all funny. But if I click this here while I'm animating, it allows me just to kind of lift up and have my orientation of my coordinate like tabs the appropriate direction. It just makes it a little bit easier when I'm animating. And so I'm going to grab this floor pillar first. And in fact, let's grab all 3 of them. Shift click all 3 in the panel over there. And, ooh, can I do that? Yeah, I think I can. Let's keyframe. If you come down here, if you grab objects like I just did, and you look over here, it's going to say mixed on your coordinates, your transform coordinates. And that's because we have different objects and they're all in different places. And so it might just be best to not grab them and move them like that. Maybe just doing one at a time will be easier. So I'm going to do the floor pillar. I'm going to only change the Y position, but I might rotate it a little bit. So I'm going to add some rotation into there. And then I'm also going to do the same with the floor pillar 2. So I'm going to keyframe the Y, keyframe the rotations. Same with 3. Keyframe the Y, keyframe the rotations. And then I'm going to select this one here. And you don't see anything, right, because I don't have keyframes at the end of the animation. And I'm going to move this one up now. This one's going to move up like this. And making sure that I'm over here, I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to hit R for rotate. And then I'm just going to maybe rotate it just a slight bit like that. Just in 2 different positions. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to keyframe that rotational change. And then now, when I select my pillar 1 and hit H on here, I should be getting keyframes. Ooh, there we go. Let's see. Pillar 1, didn't it not record it? Okay, so dope sheet view it is. Let's go to the end here again. And oh, pillar 3. This is the one. I recorded it. It's fine. Okay, cool. So it's floating and it's rotating a little bit. Let's do the same to the second pillar. So we're going to go, maybe not as high. I'm going to select pillar 2. I'm going to hit, I'm going to increase the Y value a little bit here. Maybe this one, I'm going to keyframe that. And then this one maybe rotates a little bit this way, maybe a little bit this way, and then this way as well, like almost going to collide. And then finally, I'm going to select the first pillar over here, and then also increase the Y, and then rotate. Right, so maybe it rotates a little like this, and a little bit this way. Opposite direction, right there. Cool. Let's keyframe these. So let's go to the beginning of our thing and just kind of play. Cool. Everything's kind of rising and moving. These are kind of moving. So that's neat. In fact, I don't even know. Let's go ahead and do the same easing to these. So Going to the beginning of the timeline, let's select the first floor pillar. We're going to go into F-curve mode. This one might be a little bit more tricky, right? Because I'm going to grab the position and one property at a time, right? So I'm going to go to spline and I'm going to hit H here. And then I'm going to just hold down shift and kind of break this and drag it down. In fact, that one looks just nice like that. And then the rotation here, I'm going to hit H. I am going to, maybe the rotations we can leave linear. Let's watch this. Cool. Yeah, it almost looks like the rotations are kind of, I actually don't mind that. I kind of like that. So let's do that with these ones too. So just the position. I'm going to hit H and I'm going to select the position property on the second pillar. Have to grab them up here. Remember, we got to grab them in there. And then let's hit H again. Grab just the position, hit H. And then we will select it. Come on. Why not let me grab it? There we go. Select this one and this one. Let's do that. There we go. Holding down shift, we're just going to bring this down a little bit. And then we'll do it finally to the third one as well. Just grab the position there, hit H on the keyboard, drag and select all of the keyframes. In fact, I will drag from here and select the keyframes. And then I will hit this, and then I will shift drag. So they're all going to kind of start rotating first and then pulling up, almost like they're being taken from like an alien or something like that. Are you guys following along at the same time, or are you guys doing your own thing? I'm thirsty. So thirsty. Let's see if we can get the scatter pen to animate anything. Let's drop this down real quick. If I grab the scatter, I can rotate them like that, but I don't think I like that. 90, negative 90, what was that at? Yeah. Can I update the elements? I'm not sure where they went to. Edit mode. Hey, if I put it in edit mode, that might allow me. First of all, let me go back. There we go. Leave that there. Then let me go to object. Let me select that. Let me click edit mode. Ooh, what happens? Okay, let's get out of our camera view. We're done with the eyeball. Ooh, you know what? We could have this whole thing kind of hovering up and down. Before we get to this, let's undo this. Undo that so we see them. And let's grab let's make that small. The butterfly, bring that up, and let's just kind of animate the Y value of that. So, okay, bring it all the way to the beginning. The butterfly eye null. Just select it there, go to basics. We're going to keyframe the Y position. In fact, I'm going to put it at, we're going to go back in dope sheet view because it's easier to look at. And I'm going to put this at 175. So it's like even there. And then I'm going to bring it all the way to the end and keyframe it at 175. Same. Let me go back to the beginning and just double check. 175. Remember, make a change, got to record it. So let's kind of go every second and maybe move it up or down, right? So maybe here it's going up a little bit. record. 225. Oop, that's way off. 225, record. Move 48 frames. Move it down. 150. Record. All right. 16, 12, 24, 48. 2. We're going to go. What was this one? 24. What'd I do here? 225. Okay. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to leave these position. Actually, that might be good. 96 frames. Wait, 72, 20, 92, 94, 150. All right. Let's select the butterfly. Let's go to this. Let's do the actual, drop this down here because we're going to do the actual eye, the Y position there. We're going to hit H here. And then let's kind of get a little easing on. Let's do that. And just kind of shift and drag them. Oh, holding down, sorry. Let's do this again. H, hit Control and drag. That'll just make them. Let's see how that looks like. It's a little too dramatic. Let's change it back to linear and see what happens that way. No, I like it. It has to. It should be. That should be this way. But actually, let's make it a little less dramatic. So let's not hold down Control and bring these in. So they're kind of. Or let's take the down ones here. Hold down Control. Drag them out like that. That's kind of neat. Mess around with the easing a little bit here. So not everything has to have easing on it. Might want to change the values of these, right? So it doesn't go as high. So if I hold down Control, Shift. Oh, we want these to both be at the same angle. So if you grab the keyframes in the F curve mode and you drag them down, it will actually change the values of the objects as well. So I can see I maybe don't want as drastic of a dip happening in between this. Like they move down and up too high, and I don't like that about it. So I'm just gonna grab these and just make them like a smaller, tighter little wave. And so it doesn't go up as high, and they kind of just stay within the same area there. And then I'm going to adjust my curves a little bit again. So I'm going to hit Control, sorry, wrong one, Control, and just kind of drag these out. This one, maybe bring these in a little bit. Holding down that Control. Not bad. I might want to mess around with these a little bit more later, you know. Let's see here. Maybe don't want it. So dramatic at the top one. Kind of want to smooth these out so they're just nice and smooth looking. Almost like standard easing, but not. All right, cool. And then let's go to the beginning. And let's save this and start throwing on some materials to here. So I'm going to go in here and go under materials and click off of that. And let's see. I am going to put on here? We want standard. So standard and physical under here. You can start to look at this. This asphalt is not bad, actually. I actually kind of like the black one. I'm going to drag that onto the big cube here. Let's turn on our lights in our scene. We can, under here, if under the top where you go to your render settings and stuff, if you grab this, you can have like an interactive render region. You'll click on that, and that will give you an idea of what the final look is going to be like. We obviously need some lights to be in here, so I turn those lights off. Let's go back into the studio and turn those lights on, right? So we can actually see them in the scene. And the asphalt is really dark. That asphalt is not a... That's a standard material. There's very little reflectance in it. Let's go over here. Let's maybe make this a little bit smaller so we can see our scene a little bit more. We're going to zoom in here because we're not on the... and what you're noticing is that it's like constantly trying to update the interactive render region so we can see what everything looks like. This is black, like totally black. Reflectance. Ooh, that's just kind of a tough material to see. It might look better when you render it out, but I think I'm going to drop that material and just use something that looks a little bit better. And sometimes that's the option you guys have to use. Now, if there's materials in here, you've put a bunch of stuff in here and there's things in here you don't use anymore, you can go up to under create or edit, delete unused materials, and then that'll slim this down for you. And in fact, we're going to delete this right off of here, and we'll just delete this right here as well. And we should be good. Let's drag in this lighter gray asphalt, see what that looks like. All right, not bad. Let's drop the tiling down on this because it's a little bit too big. Like the size of this is too large for me. I want it to kind of look smaller. In fact, maybe asphalt is not the appropriate material I'm looking for. Maybe I want more of like a concrete. So I'm actually going to delete that. You just want to grab the tag here next to the actual object in the object file and then delete it there, and then also delete it in your material panel. So I'm going to go to concrete instead. Actually, this one's really neat looking. I'm going to grab this concrete. Should update this in a second. Let's go to wood and, oops, under standard, right? We want to standard that standard. There we go. Okay, this is interesting. Let's shut the interactive render region off, and we can kind of see like an image of that here. If I hit Control or Command R and do a render preview, I can see this. And again, I'm not a really big fan of how big the pattern is, and so I want to kind of tile this down, right? And how you can do that is down here at the bottom. There's an option that says tile, and this is just essentially your X. It's a UV tiling because you're using UV mapping, but you're scaling down the U and the V, essentially like coordinates of the object. So I'm just going to drop this down a little bit, maybe 0.5. Let's do half. I'm going to make it equal so it doesn't look skewed. 0.5, 0.5, and let's look at that again. Control R. All right, that's okay. I don't know if that's making it bigger or smaller. Actually, we want to make that number bigger. So let's do 1.5 and 1.5. And that's going to make it a little bit bigger there. And let's maybe try and round off this cube's corners there. If I select fillet, under the object because I haven't changed this is still a primitive object. And so if I hit fillet there, and then I can just kind of make this a little bit round like that. And I can increase the subdivisions, which will give me like maybe a more squared off view. You don't have to have a lot, maybe 5 here. And that way I can kind of get like more of like a slightly rounded edge. And it just looks a little bit better. There are things like that look nice, right? And then I'm going to add maybe some kind of metal to the legs. Maybe like a bronze metal will look interesting there. Let's do, you don't have to keep dragging it from the asset browser into here. Once you've got it in here, you can just drag it onto the object like that, or you can drag it into over the layer like this, and it'll work either way. You know, something weird. Let's do some glass for these objects back here. Let's do like a, oh, what is this? Like a murky glass or something? Murano. Sodamine blocks. Tinted glass, turquoise glass, tempered glass, coated. Ooh, that's neat. Let's use that. The coated tempered glass on these guys. Oh, I don't know why I did that. See? I did exactly what I told you guys not to do. You don't have to do that. Just click and drag it from here so you don't have a bunch of materials in the material browser here. And then the other thing I want to do is let's grab these pillars and also do the same thing. So let's fillet these and give them like just a slight curved edge. So I'm going to grab the first one and maybe make this one. You don't want to go too far. 1 looks good. 2 centimeters. Let's try 10. 10's a little bit intense. I'll go to 8. Let's do 5. I think 5 looks good. Do the same for these. Go over here. Type in 5. This third one. Type in 5. All right. And then the only other thing we need to do is throw a material on the backdrop. So maybe like a plastic, like a matte plastic would look neat. Let's see what else here could kind of look cool here. A ground material, possibly, maybe not really into it. Organic materials, cow, lizard. We turned it into a lizard. Cool. So you get some really cool stuff with these initially, the car paint. Car paint would be kind of neat. Try something different. Effects. You guys can still mess around with some of these fun things. Fabric might look interesting. I think I'm going to stick with like a plastic. I wish there was like a plaster under this. Tiles, walls. Like a wallpaper. A rough wall. No, I'm going to go to plastic, and I think I'm just going to do a matte plastic and drop it onto the floor. And then come in here and kind of color it. So under reflectance, let's go under color. Let's click on here. Let's add a gradient into here. So I'm going to double click and maybe do like a violet color. Okay. And then maybe like a blue, a lighter blue. It's kind of interesting. Maybe I'm going to flip them. Or, no, actually I kind of like that. I'm going to add another one here. If it just, under here, if you just click, you can just add another one. I think I'm going to add like a even lighter colored one down here. So it kind of builds like this gradient up this way. In fact, maybe I want to add a hint of like orange in here. Maybe like a magenta color. It's kind of interesting. Cool. Okay. So we've got like this interesting color palette happening here, but how many more minutes we got? Okay, 10 more minutes. Cool. So now I'm going to look into my camera now that I've got everything all set, right? Maybe I want to add another light in here to make it, because my lights are spotlight. You want to make sure that you have the shadow maps on there. I am going to maybe use the temperature and change the temperature to make it a little bit of a warmer light on this key light and this fill light here. So use temperature. Let's kind of increase so it's a little bit warmer. And then I'm going to move back without looking in the camera. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to kind of move back here. And I might want to add in another light above. So these, if it has ST next to it, it says standard, right? And so I'm going to add a standard area light. And when I do that, that's going to significantly like light up my area. And then if I lift this up here, it is going to get much brighter. Now, the thing is that the rotation, I believe, matters with this one. No, not on this one. This one is this one's not directional. Which one's the directional that I like? Area light, infinite light, physical ray. This is okay. Target light, spotlight. But I can essentially like make this a little bit bigger area. If I want the light to be a little bit brighter, I'm going to go back up, moving it up a little bit more so it's not like right on top. And it's going to just kind of be there more or less to fill in some of the shadows that are on the sides of this, because it gets a little bit dark. When I was looking through it, like the edges over here were a little too dark. And so I'm just going to pull back out of here. I'm going to grab this light. I'm going to probably drop it down a little bit more. Oh, undo that. Grab this. Nope, grabbing the wrong one. Let's move up. Okay. Grabbing this, moving it down. There we go. Here we go. Okay. Can I rotate this? I didn't think. Shift 90. Ooh, we're getting some crazy stuff looking with the eyes. I was not expecting that. Let's click off of here. Let's go into our camera view, and then all right, let's figure out what's going on with the, might be the type of render that we're in. So if I go to my render settings, and this is probably why the glass isn't working, is because we're in the viewport render. This is a great render setting for a majority of you guys to use, because based on how your computer is going to work, this is going to be the best one for you. I could try doing the standard one, which will possibly, let's see if I change it to that, will it allow me to see through those? Yes. So when I use the standard renderer, okay, like I'm going to get all of the transparencies and stuff through here. If you're not able to use that and you have to do this in the viewport renderer, this is a big thing, right? Is when you're rendering your video out in the viewport renderer, you want to go over to these settings over here, and under filter you want to make sure that you have geometry only checked on, right? Because if you don't have that checked on, it's going to show all these lines, and you don't want those lines. The other thing you want to see is, I think transparencies is on, but it just didn't show that glass material. I would have to change if I were doing this. So some of these materials you might have to update depending on if you can render in the viewport renderer or the physical or standard renderer. The standard renderer should be your second option, and then your third option could be the physical renderer, but these will take a, when I talk about render times, these take a dramatically different length of time to render out, okay? And so that's like something you guys want to think about when you're going to render this is how much time do I actually have to render? Because if you don't, if you're like crunched to the end, it might be faster for you to just render in the viewport renderer and change your materials, right? You got to think about that stuff. But if you get this stuff done early enough, you might be able to render it in the standard view without having much issues. Now, um, this is when the template is automatically set up to render in the viewport renderer. So if you want to be able to see the materials that you're using within that, you'll have to come in here and change these so that when you do come in here and hit Control R, you will actually see the materials working in here. But I want to still animate this camera. And so I just deleted that protection tag off of that. And I'm going to select the camera here and go under to coordinates. And while looking in this, I'm going to keyframe everything. And so in fact, instead of doing it like this, I'm just going to come over here and click this little button down here. Which allows me to keyframe it allows me to keyframe everything all at once. So now if maybe I want to start a little further back, right? So if I'm moving my camera, it's going to start me a little further back. And I'm going to make sure I want to record all those changes here. And then I'm going to move my camera to the end and I'm going to maybe push in a little bit. Right? Not a lot. You just want a little bit of a push in. I'll change that. And then maybe I want to, do I want to do a little rotation up? No, I don't think I want to do a rotation. Maybe I want to do a side to side motion. So, not this way. Maybe this way a little bit more. Maybe right here would be okay. And then over here, I can start maybe somewhere over here. Right, so the camera's going to move. It's going to push in and also move this way a little bit at the same time. Very subtle movements that are happening within the camera. And it's very important that when you're animating the actual camera, that you have linear keyframes on the camera in order to get that cinematic look, right? So if I select my camera here and then I go into my F-curve mode and obviously I want to make sure that all of them are selected, which they are, and make sure that it says linear right here, which it should be with this if you set your settings appropriate in the first place. And then you can just go ahead and render this out as needed. But I think the Surreal one's going to be, I don't know which one you guys will enjoy a little bit more. I think this one's going to be a little bit more of a difficult, this is going to be more of a challenging project in terms of like being able to determine which actual materials work well with however you're going to render it out, right? So if you're going in here to render this and it's rendering black, like straight black materials, when you go to render it, then I would definitely pick something else, right? Unless you can render it in this standard renderer. Also, this is a big thing right here, right? So I am, let's see the motion. What do I want to do here? Saved. I forgot what I was going to say. Let's see if we can figure out the eyeball situation. That was what I was looking at. The eyeball is a little bit weird if you guys go to use the eyeball. So it might be something that you have to update in here. Cell shading, light, specular, highlight. This might have to be an issue with the rotation of the actual material like I did in the beginning. So it doesn't look like there's multiple irises on the eye when I go to look at it while I'm working, but when I hit Control R, you can actually see there's multiple iterations of this. So it might actually have to do with when I selected the material editor like option right there and then rotated it 90 degrees. So if I select that and then grab the eye again, and let's see if that's the problem there. I just want to real quick troubleshoot that. Shift 80, 90, -90, back up to where it was. Let's do this. Control R. It's still got that issue going on. So, that might be something we have to troubleshoot later. But I mean, it is a Surreal project, so it's not a big deal for me if your eyeballs have multiple irises on there. But have fun with this project. Go ahead and this one had more of the animation. That's why I did this one today. Now the other ones for the rest of the class, and I know we're hanging over a little bit of time, but I appreciate you guys hanging over. The realistic one, you can watch me put that together essentially and do all the lighting and stuff right here. So if you guys want to do that later, but essentially all you're doing is like building a room and then putting things in that room to make it look good. I'm going to say the biggest thing that people have an issue with is not having a linear camera, and then also not putting enough stuff on like shelves, desks, things like that to make the area look lived in, right? Because we're thinking realism, attention to detail is really important. Other than that, this is a pretty fun project to do. Actually fairly minimal animation and more just kind of learning like the asset browser materials, a little bit more about lighting and setting up a scene inside of Cinema 4D, which is, it's a little time consuming. So time management in this project is going to be very important, especially when it comes to that rendering, right? So make sure February 9th, 19th through the 26th is when this is due. If you guys have any questions, you can absolutely like ask me, ask Belle, whoever. Let me know if you need anything. All right. Let me see here. Oh, the stream's almost dying anyways. I'll let you guys go. Have